Scott, I'm excited to be doing this in person today.
In person, a couple years later.
In person, a couple years later. Let's talk about how did we get here doing a podcast in person in Phoenix today?
Well, I think I was in CES in Las Vegas for a week with the team. And then I think you must have seen online that I was there and wanted to reach out. And I didn't have many plans after. So it ended up working out. You offered to let me stay at your place. So we ended up doing that.
Exactly. I was like hoping at first, I was like, maybe just say hi to my dad. My dad lives in Vegas. He'll be on the strip that weekend. Just like, run by where he works and say, hey. And it didn't work out. And then you're like, what if I just came to Scottsdale instead? So.
Yeah. Well, I was planning to go to a few places further north, but, so say some friends in San Francisco, but the weather there is, there's currently a flood and it's raining a lot and whatnot. So, coming to visit you was very serendipitous, and I booked the flight the next day, and now I've been over at your place for the last few days.
It's been a good time. Maybe towards the end I'll ask you what you think of Phoenix versus Sydney. But what were you doing at CES? Like, what was the value in being there?
So for our company, Espresso, we're based in Sydney, Australia, and we're a consumer electronics company. And CES is the largest trade show of the year, where it has everyone announcing and releasing the latest, greatest tech. It has, people, heads of IT departments who are looking for particular solutions within their organization. And of course, retail, distributors, wholesalers from all over the world go here to discover and find new products that they can sell to their customers for the year. So it's one of the best places for us to go to exhibit and also network and meet with current vendors and suppliers and wholesalers and distributors, as well as form new relationships.
That's awesome. Let's dive into kind of maybe you're making announcements there, maybe there. I want to start with not the kind of latest and greatest or latest and breaking news from Espresso, but let's start like towards the beginning and the origin story. Where were you in life? You're still obviously a young guy, and this company's been around since a couple of years now. Where were you in life when you started this company?
Yes, it was just towards the end of my degree. I studied a bachelor's of civil engineering. So it was about a 5-year degree in Sydney, Australia, because you do about 1 year of practical experience. 6 months in your second year, 6 months in your fourth year. Adds an extra year, 5 years. And towards the end of that degree, I'd had, about 4 years worth of industry experience. I had that job lined up and always itching to kind of do a bit more or whatever else was exciting. So worked on a non-profit with some friends, and that sent me over to Nepal a couple of times to be involved with that. And in addition, we did this entrepreneurial subject. And in that entrepreneurial subject, we're throwing around a bunch of different ideas and working on kind of group projects. And one of those was with my now co-founder, Will, where we were really frustrated from only working from one laptop screen when we were used to using 2 or more kind of large monitors to actually get work done. And it was that, I guess, initial pain point. Without having industry experience, never created a company before, never developed a product, but having that clear understanding of the need of the product and the passion and the energy around it, plus also the idea at that stage of creating our own product was just the coolest thing. It wasn't, at that stage, it's not about the business idea. It wasn't about the growth or anything else like that. It was purely, wouldn't it be cool if we created our own product, even if it was just a prototype that only we used.
What's interesting about that, did you have multiple monitors set up at your engineering, in-person experience?
Yeah, absolutely. I had 2 32-inch monitors, and I would stay after work, nights, evenings and whatnot, and do most of my university work there because I had a full setup, even printers and everything else. So that was my standard for when I wanted to put on music, do a solid block of uni work. But then now when I was at the university campus, you only have your small laptop screen. So it's not even nearly comparable. So I kind of understand both worlds. I think at that stage, which was 2018, people kind of had 2 environments. Environment 1 was they had an office, a set office with multiple monitors, and that was pretty much the only place they did work. Working from home was kind of a fringe thing that, not many people did. And if people did do it, they'd probably have a similar setup at home.
It's effectively an office setup just in their house.
An office setup in their house in 2018. The opposite was kind of university students, for example, would only work off a laptop screen and never use multiple monitors, so never identified the need. So myself, as well as my co-founder, both kind of had that comparison to understand that, hey, wouldn't it be cool not even what would it be cool with, it is annoying that I don't have 2 screens when we're here at university trying to, do this assignment.
Well, it comes back to what we were talking about on the way here when we were driving, right? We kind of very easily adapt to better circumstances and are very resistant when those better circumstances are pulled away from us. And I think that's what kind of positioned you as a unique founder in this circumstance. Is I never really cared about a second monitor at any point in my life until I had used it for the first time. And then kind of since that point, I've been completely unwilling to work without a second monitor. And you've enabled a lot of that as well, just in terms of how old I am and how long Espresso's been around and my career arc. But the fact that you were still in school when a lot of people still have that like ambition and like I can do something really big, and like your creativity, and you're a lot less kind of boxed in and what you consider possible because you're in that kind of academic and very nurturing environment. Having already known what it's like to have that screen and then being like, I'm just going to refuse to do like this difficult project without a good setup, really positioned you well to do this. So was the idea birthed inside of like an entrepreneurship class, or was it kind of like on the side that it came about?
It was on the side on campus, one late evening when we were trying to just like do the assignment and get that done. But I think that the importance of that layer of the entrepreneurial subject, that even in an engineering curriculum, it's kind of quite separated from entrepreneurship and brainstorming ideas. So it was kind of a form of energy of us like riffing on ideas of what if this, what if that, kind of created that environment for us to then have our own individual pain point and frustration, which then turned into but what if, rather than this is annoying, okay, let's just go home. Let's go home, end of the conversation. It was, this is annoying, what is the solution? I think that's like part of the difference.
And the difference as well is that you weren't two business students, you were two engineering students. Like, how difficult can it be to achieve this idea?
And it wasn't driven from, is this a good business idea? It was driven initially from, wouldn't it be cool to create our own product?
Was that a kind of long-standing ambition of yours?
No, it definitely wasn't for me at that time. I think it definitely was for Will prior to that as well. But for me, it really came from solving that pain point, which we had that night, and then that energy around developing that. And Will, like that night, created a 3D printed prototype that he connected to his laptop and put a tablet in it and sent me that photo, which I
was
thought
like a case, kind of.
Yeah. It was like a frame that kind of extended out from your laptop and put a tablet in there. Like he did it like that night. So there was just an energy that was formed around like momentum was created.
Yeah, not waiting.
We can create our own thing. Like this is really cool. And like that excitement, as well as I wanted that problem solved, like for myself.
You're like, I have a lot more work to do before I am back in the office setting, and I'd prefer to have a second screen when I do all of it.
Well, it's always about like, I guess, freedom and choice and flexibility of being able to have that kind of ideal setup, but wherever you go, like whatever your reasons are, whether it's demanded from you by your workplace, say if you're on the road salesperson, maybe you're in a C-suite role where you have to travel a lot. If you're out and on the road a lot, then you want to be able to like set up at any given desk and just be able to work without having frustrations of, I wish I was back in the office. And that's what we're looking to solve. And I knew that really well, very personally.
So presumably, right, you're in your early 20s, so is Will. I don't assume you had this huge bankroll to do all this R&D. How do you go from this kind of plastic iPad frame to actually a shippable product that, we have one in the studio we can kind of put on camera later on, but what was the progression from we're still in school, somewhat broke, and we want to take this frame and actually have one and start using it?
Yeah, so a few different things happened. It took about a year and a half from that initial moment to actually launching on Kickstarter, launching the prototype publicly. So a few things we moved in together. So that just mean that we could
24/7 startup vibes.
Yeah, well, yeah, it meant that like that was the thing. We were moving that forward, and yeah, that was really exciting time. There were also really cheap flights to China where we didn't really have anything
That's
specific.
such a good point. You're so much closer to China and Sydney.
Same time zone, plus minus a couple of hours. We got return flights extremely cheap, so we just went over there just to like suss it out and see what it was like, and that was really cool at that earlier stage to actually not make the whole manufacturing side of what we would eventually have to do, very foreign and scary, but actually going there just for fun, just to check it out, so that kind of made it a lot more approachable, less daunting and whatnot. And I think we'd never really had any like reservations about that in the first place. But it was a very exciting thing to do. All that happened in like the first couple of months. And then really it was around kind of getting each of like the components of the prototype, as we wanted with something we wanted to take to the market, and just created a couple of iterations of it and various prototypes. And then we got to one that like we were very happy with. We thought it was great. And people, we had people asking us saying, hey, can I pay you money right now for this prototype because I want that? And we're like, no, we've got to use that for our launch. That was a very good indication that, hey, we've gotten to a stage now where we can launch a pre-sale campaign using Kickstarter and kind of switch from kind of the initial product development to marketing
and full-scale product development.
Yeah, but it was very lean operation back then. It was still definitely like expensive personally at that stage with the money that we had. So we both had other jobs at the time, and so like that definitely cost a bit of money getting physical products, not just a couple of software licenses that you might have just gotten for free or like a startup.
It's not just your Canva account and your Shopify account.
Yeah.
End of story.
Yeah, and like the equivalent like accelerator, discount or whatever you get initially. So yeah, a bit more expensive. And then we also got a local government grant that's focused on developing an MVP. So that really helped us kind of get at that final stage across the line. And yeah, and then Kickstarter was great for that because we were able to pretty much, create all the marketing collateral and marketing assets, create a video and the Kickstarter landing page and take that to market and get that upfront money that we could put into production.
Yeah, and like you're saying, that transition to marketing, the two of you hadn't really done marketing at all before that.
No, pretty much every step of the business along the way, we've had to learn from scratch with what we need to kind of figure out. And as the business progressed, we were able to kind of find the people who had the skill set and experiences that could kind of take it to the next level. And that's kind of the same position that we're in now. Continually, that's the most fun part that, you carry it through knowing what you want to try and get to. And you get to, hire and bring people into the team that are incredible at what they do. They've been doing it for, years or even decades, and bring that experience and that skill set into, whatever the next chapter is of our company.
Let's talk about now the V2 screen that you actually did show off at CES. Like, what is that, Dimensions is that this huge, I have the V1, right? Because when we did our interview year and a half ago, I got the V1 because that's what it was. But now we have the V2. And let's talk about like the actual specifics of this product. So it's not just an iPad in a frame anymore. Yeah,
so the Espresso display is an ultra thin USB-C external monitor. It is the world's thinnest portable monitor. And what it does is it connects to your laptop as well as some tablets, desktop computers, even some phones, gaming consoles, anything that you traditionally connect a desktop monitor to, and enables you to have a second or even third screen that you can kind of set up and take with you anywhere. Now, why do we want it to have it as the world's thinnest? Not necessarily the world's thinnest, but being light and thin is super important if you're going to take it around in your backpack with you when you're traveling. I'm aware of pretty much every, gram or pound that's in my backpack when I'm carrying it and traveling around the world and walking. So making it really light and thin is what earns space into your bag, as well as the utility of, needing to have 2 or 3 screens when traveling on the go. We have a range of stands and accessories because our goal isn't necessarily about creating a monitor, but it's creating a productive portable workspace. So what we've got here, this is the Espresso stand, and we all have magnetic stands and accessories that all kind of fold around. And what we love about this, and this is our most loved accessory as well, is that it has a dual hinge that you can adjust the height and you can adjust the angle, so you can kind of create your perfect workspace whenever you are ready to get set up and plug it in.
Yeah, so I almost always used mine in vertical mode. I write a lot of code and did a lot of long documents and writing, so the vertical rotated screen was also really clutch for me.
Yeah, so one of the differences between V1 and V2 that a lot of our customers love is that we created an auto rotate feature with the launch of our desktop app called Espresso Flow. This is because a lot of people like you like to use it into portrait mode, and especially with the Espresso stand, you can easily rotate it into a portrait orientation. And kind of what you're used to with tablets or mobile phones is that you just rotate it and it just transitions to that layout. Now, in monitors, that's a lot more difficult and it's very uncommon. It's only really on
most monitors don't have like hardly any intelligence, right? It's literally just a display. That is like the word display is to be taken literally.
Very much so, very much. And the Apple Pro Display XDR is one of the very few that does have that feature set. But that's obviously...
it's like, what's that screen, like $10,000 or something?
It's very expensive. Yeah. It's a very different kind of customer and different use case. But
yeah, that one's not ultra portable.
Definitely not. And it's one of those things that the more that we can kind of create a great experience for people who, don't really want to focus on the monitor itself or setting up your desktop and setup, but actually the work that you're doing like within your workspace environment, laptop, display, any other devices that you're going to be using. That's really where we want to drive the most value with our product suite. And that's where the launch of Espresso Flow is one of the key differences from V1 to V2, and auto rotates one of a few of those features. One of the other features that I really loved and a core part of our kind of product strategy, pretty much based on all the user feedback that we had from version 1, was rather than using a third-party company that helped us with doing touchscreen on Mac for our version 1, Espresso Flow, our own desktop app, is what now enables and drives that. That allows us to kind of have full control of that product experience, and we've now been able to deliver a much better kind of touch experience and introducing our own stylus, so that can be used for whiteboarding, drawing, marking up documents, even hobbyist visual illustration.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of steps between two engineering students and creating your own native touchscreen software and creating your own external device that connects to the software and putting that on the team. So what, in terms of present day, does the kind of size and scope of like the engineering resources look like? Are these like problems that you solved internally? Like you and Will just like figured out how to make the right chip you have to install and how to make the monitor go on its own? Is that something you outsource to like a contract manufacturer? You've at this point hired really intelligent engineers, and I'm sure there's a different answer potentially for like each of those different technical challenges I've outlined, but yeah, each of those is a substantial technical challenge.
Yeah, there's a lot. We have been in the game for a few years now, and we have just done things one step at a time. Like, say, for example, we solved a lot of the form factor and I guess basic supply chain challenges with the version 1, getting that into the market, and then utilizing, I guess, say third-party software providers because we had to bring something to market pretty quickly. Those types of things are where you kind of start. The engineering team is one of the biggest teams in Espresso right now. We're very much like an engineering and product development company, but we also do our own marketing and sales primarily to also connect the insights, like sell directly to the customer with exactly what we create, and then also get the insights and feedback from them, which goes directly back into our engineering and product design pipeline. Now, a few parts of that. The first part is having your supply chain and contract manufacturing, from the architecture and the chips that you kind of use, and then your engineering team kind of works with and helps guide the selection of that. Like, I'm very, very, very limited in my role that I play in that. That's a bit beyond, my knowledge and skill sets. But selection of the components that you use is one of the very important things because that unlocks particular challenges. The supply chain over time with new technology also changes. So, every so often you also have to kind of change what components that you use to cater towards, as we know in the last couple of years, like various supply chain challenges, even pricing or new technologies that kind of come out. So that's one of the important first things that you have to do. The next part of your question really, I guess, comes into, say, the software. The software has now solved a few things for us. The software, for one, actually is really important to the user interface for pretty much finding all your like monitor settings and layouts across both Windows and Mac.
Yeah, user interface and user experience as well, kind of.
User interface and user experience, very, very useful. So say, for example, on Mac and Windows, a lot of people, like a very surprising number of people, really struggle with going into system preferences on Mac or settings on Windows and diving through that kind of menu to find where their monitor and display settings are and change the thing that they want to do. So imagine you plug in the Espresso display and you press the Espresso app, and the first thing that you see is an arrangement of your multi-monitor setting. That way you can then kind of click whatever display that you want and kind of change some of those settings, layouts, brightness, orientation, things like that just reduce a lot of our customer support tickets because the users are able to find exactly what they want, where it's intuitive. So that's one of the first things. Second thing is that it also enables new functionality as kind of being like a smart monitor that, like what you said, the basic display isn't able to do. So one of those is, as we spoke about, auto rotate, and another one is the touch experience. And not just having a, single pressure touch experience, but a pressure sensitive touch experience so you can draw and illustrate with kind of high fidelity and make it a really high quality drawing experience on Mac, but also a higher quality drawing experience on Windows too.
Yeah, I think that, a lot of people I interview on this podcast kind of has molded my philosophy towards like the MVP type approach, right? Like the just minimum viable product, get what you need to have in there. Whereas you're kind of like from day one, no, it needs to like kind of have all of these to be competitive, right? It just has to have everything working right off the bat. It has to be portable. The power, for example, has to be convenient. So that's a huge thing for me that I always appreciated was that because it's USB-C, right? You don't need like an external power source, and that's a huge pain in the butt for portability. It's like now to find, because when you're traveling and working anywhere but your house, it's like, am I going to be limited by how much battery my laptop has and then how much battery the second screen has? And that's kind of like one problem that's solved. But even like caring to integrate touchscreen, it's, at least to me, seems like a very difficult thing to worry about. And also making sure that's like present in day one. Why specifically is like touchscreen so important in your opinion to like, that was important this early on in the company's journey to be part of like a non-negotiable?
In our initial go-to-market, it wasn't as important as what we thought. It was primarily the portability and being able to have a second screen as a core component, and having touch was more around a supply chain opportunity that we had. That if we're going to create a monitor, could we also add it to be touch as well? Yes, we can. Okay, let's do it. But what happened in that first year in the market, where a lot of people, and especially the touch for Mac with the third-party software. So many customers came to us both from Windows and Mac saying that the touch drawing experience was something that they really, really wanted. They used a lot, and it was almost an essential part of their product experience of the Espresso display. And that was really exciting, and it was really surprising. And in addition, we also had a lot of kind of tailwinds around being touch for Mac, which has never really been the case. It's never really been accessible and an easy interface for people to use and utilize for common usage. So whether it was tech press and tech journalists, whether it was YouTubers, or whether it was just customers seeing that they could use touch for Mac, being able to utilize that was a big draw for them initially, which was probably something that we didn't think about as much until those customers mentioned that to us. And at the same time, this was now 2020, end of 2020, and everyone's now moved to a work from home or work from home back in the office a couple of days a week, depending on where you were in the world. But primarily now this fully remote, working lifestyle that we've just shifted to then change kind of how we collaborated or how we visually communicated. There was no more kind of whiteboards and in meeting rooms where people would discuss different ideas or put different notes up. But now with our display and the fact that it was touch, you could now say share screen and virtually whiteboard. So kind of replaced what would traditionally in an office either be, a whiteboard, for example, or some of those more really expensive interactive whiteboards that cost thousands and thousands of dollars. So there was a number of things there in that we heard from our customers and users that we thought, no, this is a very important thing for us to do. It will open up a very solid roadmap for us into the future. We're very early listening to our customers right as a lot of significant behavioral changes happened. And we did, an engineering evaluation of what can we do, what's possible, and saw that we could do it. So we moved forward with it.
There's this point you're talking about when you were a student with this, you're you didn't really care. Your priority wasn't, is this a viable business? You're just I just want to get a product into the world. Where was the point in your story when that kind of shifted, not in terms of your priority, but in terms of realizing not just would a student care to have this, but what made it click that, okay, there's actually tons and tons of scenarios where people are going to want this specific type of thing?
Yeah, so it particularly shifted for me once we launched the Kickstarter, and once we that campaign was finished, and we got about $430,000 during that 40-day campaign.
Is that technically a pre-order?
They were all pre-order,
Okay.
pre-sale. It's a pre-sale platform that pretty much says, hey, we've got to put this product into mass production, and we've got to commit to a particular quantity. Help us get to that quantity so we can deliver on that as well, and also the cash to put that into production, not the having to kind of bankroll that yourself and then hope that you have a customer once you're ready to go to the market. So the platform's really good for taking a new product to market. But what we found, was great.
Specifically a physical product. Yeah.
Yeah, specifically physical product, yep. Now, once we kind of had that campaign, we already saw that, hey, we're going to deliver this product to the customers, and we don't have much money to even buy more products.
Yeah.
What do we do next? And that's when the start of the kind of business thinking allowed us to kind of think, hey, how do we get more of these products into more people's hands? And at the same time, we know there's so many more things that we want to do. How do we, the business is the system that helps us to create and do more of the things that we want to do, whether it is new products, whether it's new features, whether it's even new, events and activations. Like that's essentially what, you want to kind of do. And that's when we started to think beyond just how great is it to create a product. We've now done that. Now it's all these other ideas that have stemmed, just like, the Espresso display was the first idea.
Exactly.
And how do we bring those into life? And that's pretty much still where we are today. And we still have, probably years of things that we want to do. And, there's more ideas that we have, more products that we want to create. And that's kind of where the thinking's at.
Yeah, so what would you define kind of the overall mission for the company as? Because I think, there was a point in time where it's, okay, we've created this unique thing, the Espresso display, let's get that in as many hands as possible. But now that there's all these different pieces of the puzzle, like how do you say like the kind of working towards one cohesive goal?
Yeah, the cohesive goal is helping people to create their ideal portable, productive workspace setup wherever they want. So wherever you want to go, based on whether it's personal choice or whether it's, part of your responsibility and role, you should be able to go anywhere and set up a productive workspace that helps get you into flow as quickly as possible. So our desktop app is called Espresso Flow because that's really at the core of the essence that we're trying to kind of, create with this company. It's not necessarily about the tools that you use. It's not really even about the laptop or about the Espresso display. It's about what you're able to do with it. And getting into flow, removing distractions, removing frustrations that inhibit you from being your best is really what we aim to do as a company.
That makes a ton of sense. You said you sold $400,000 worth in terms of Kickstarter or, that ballpark. And I imagine that wasn't just like several hundreds of thousands of students or whatever that the math ends up being. What was that like composed of in terms of groups of people?
Well, for Kickstarter has a really strong community. So a lot of those people were really just people who back Kickstarters continuously.
Okay.
And yeah, it's very densely focused towards the Kickstarter community. I think out of the 1,152 kind of Kickstarter backers that we had, more than 1,000 had already backed a previous Kickstarter. So it was really, really surprising. So when people used to ask me, who's your persona? When we just did the Kickstarter, I was like,
people use Kickstarter.
People use Kickstarter, yeah. So
just the early adopter type person.
And this for us was quite a challenge. It's less of a challenge now, but initially, because what's the persona of a laptop user? It's pretty much everyone.
Or the persona of an iPhone user, right?
What's the persona of an iPhone user, right?
A person, yeah.
And as you're kind of going to market, really what you're looking for is a hybrid between yes, definitely persona for kind of generalization of characteristics, but almost that kind of jobs to be done for, or who is the person in the environment where a second screen is most useful for them.
Like game changing. Not just useful, but like game
changing. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's useful for everyone, but
every time you're working just from your laptop and not having that second screen and you're thinking about that and you're frustrated being like, why am I working just from this laptop? You're trying to, you've got two screens that are, you've got two applications on one laptop screen and you're dragging between them. You can't see the information you're trying to see, or you're jumping between tabs, you're minimizing, you're, say on Mac, you're, doing the four-finger explode to see all the apps and switching between it. All of that is removed by being able to have a second screen. Now that problem's solved for a fixed office with desktop monitors that have been around for decades, but in this portable environment, there's not that many solutions that effectively solve this. And there's definitely not many solutions, us and maybe a couple of others that actually solve this in a really high fidelity way for people who like to be the most productive. They really like to, work quite hard, be quite focused, and have products and tools that enable them to do that, say with touch, with the ideal kind of workspace setup, and then even what we're starting to do now with in-screen productivity tools. So it's a bit of a different kind of space compared to what we've been used to. But what we're trying to find is say traveling salespeople, consultants are a big one as well, because consultants often one also travel, but they also work from client offices and they're client facing and they want to present a kind of professional image, and having kind of our display that you can kind of flip around facing towards who you're presenting to, and then even allowing them
not even using it as a second screen, as a mirrored screen, right? It's literally just what you see that you're just showing what's on your screen, and you just have it on the other side showing them what's on your screen. And instead of you just kind of like crowding next to this person you don't know at all and like kind of standing shoulder to shoulder and staring at the kind of small space between you, you have, and I've used my espresso with like a 6 foot long Thunderbolt cable, where I literally just had it like fully like, yeah, it makes total sense. Literally just like having a desk and the same exact screen right behind, but being able to like not, do that in any setting.
It's a little bit awkward to kind of crowd around a laptop screen to try and go through a presentation and whatnot. So this kind of just removes that. So obviously,
just lit in a coffee shop, dude, just like in a super informal setting.
Exactly. So it's a still in an informal, portable, on the go anywhere setup. But now you're able to kind of set up, your laptop and then the display facing the person sitting there, and it's highly functional. It creates a very seamless experience as well. So it's very useful for that consultant, for example. Also makes them look quite good
And cutting edge.
We have a customer who we were speaking to last month in December, and they work with like GIS, like mapping software.
Sure.
And they work with like
3D data,
large organizations, governments, universities, organizations like that. And it's visualization data and being able to plug in the Espresso display and having, say, their potential clients or existing clients being able to zoom in and interact with those visual maps was something that was, they really loved that they were able to do that. So there's all these kind of like, specific examples where it's quite useful, as well as, say, for other people who run a kind of hybrid workforce and they want to map out a particular idea, or they want to, say, mark up a document and give that feedback. And a lot of people don't have printers at home. So if you can't print when you're working from home 3 days a week and you really need to, what can you do? Well, very easily, you can draw and mark up using the Espresso display. And not only does it save you printer costs and printing and ink, paper, but it's also a lot faster because you're already kind of on the tool. There's a whole range of tools that enable like PDF markup online whilst drawing. We've partnered with another Australian company to help deliver that solution. And it's very seamless, very quick, highly functional, and our product delivers one of the best experience for that.
Yeah, I was in the studio a couple of weeks ago with a notebook and a pen, and I've since upgraded to like a digital writing solution with a proper like Apple Pen and whatever. And just the paradigm difference in terms of what you can do is like, and like the word paradigm, I don't think is an exaggeration. Literally just like erasing an entire stroke versus just having to like erase kind of based on like what you physically make content. It's difficult to explain to someone who like hasn't used it before, but it's literally like, in one of those things, like when I purchased this iPad, I was like, this whole iPad's like $1,000. Like, why am I spending all this money? And then after like several weeks of using it, I'm like, this is 1,000 times better than a notebook. How is this only $1,000?
Exactly. And that's like, there's countless examples where people have those types of experiences with our products as well. Some that they know about. A lot of people initially want the product because of, again, being able to have a second screen and that portability aspect. But then the touch experience is something that they kind of discover because they've never really used it before. They use, touch screen.
Especially people who've been like lifelong Mac people, right?
Yeah. Or they have Windows devices that have never been touchscreen.
Yeah, that's true too.
Or even one of the very interesting ones are people who have a touchscreen Windows device and they don't really use touchscreen on that interface. So they think, hey, I don't really need to use the touchscreen. But part of this is actually the form factor of having a touchscreen laptop screen is not that useful. You commonly see that for those devices, they actually fold it around. They kind of convert it into a tablet.
Yeah.
They use it as a tablet, then flip it around, use it as a laptop. So using a touchscreen with your laptop is actually not that functional as a use case. This is part of the whole thesis around why Steve Jobs and why the Apple team have never gone to a touch experience for Mac, because of the ergonomics around it, that's not highly functional. But you separate that with a external monitor that you can place right in front of you, either flat on the table or at a slight angle if that's your preference. That kind of changes that dynamic about like both on the Windows experience as well as the kind of Mac experience as well.
Let's talk about now kind of, we're two guys in a room talking about how cool this is. How did you get more than two people in a room to appreciate that this is cool, right? How do you go, again, you said that the money you got from Kickstarter was not like $400,000 sounds like a lot of money, but it's very expensive to manufacture a product that's never been manufactured before. So I don't think like half of that was like, oh, now we have this great 6-figure marketing budget. I imagine it was like a closer to zero marketing budget. So what was that stage of the puzzle? Getting this awareness, getting in front of the people who have these problems and convincing them that this is actually worth trying and buying.
Yeah. So one of the things that worked really effective for us right from the beginning was PR and like tech influencers, like tech reviewers on YouTube. And that's still something that's a very important part for us and all of our product launches, and being able to see, when you haven't heard of this brand before and you see the product, you think it's kind of cool, it's a premium product, so it's pretty expensive. You want to go and do your research. You want to see, can this product do exactly what I want? Is it high quality? Is it worth the money? Right? So where do you go? You usually go to YouTube, or you go to some of these kind of tech blogs and look at the reviews and what, an experienced and professional tech reviewer has to say about this product, and then compare it to what are the other options that you want to have. So very important thing, why we did that and had a big focus on that right at the beginning was kind of, as you said, we didn't have much of a marketing budget. So, and also when we had a marketing budget, we were engineering students. We didn't know how to use a marketing budget. And we also didn't have the money to, get a marketing agency on retainer to then also tell us how to spend money that we didn't have. So it ended up being just us kind of emailing tech journalists, emailing YouTube influencers. And as soon as we had
a budget to do that.
Well, how expensive is sending an email?
For now, it's free.
For now, it's free. So that's what we were able to do. And sending out, I still remember our first article was written by a tech journalist, very experienced in Australia, John Davidson from the Australian Financial Review. And one of our first production units, it didn't even have our logo onto the product. And he was one of the first to review it during 2020. And the article said, the headline that he wrote was, this portable screen could change your life. Talking particularly to, that was a time where Australia had just moved into a lockdown and that had just finished. So he was kind of talking about that transition point was really important. But imagine you're a new brand, you just launched. At that stage, we hadn't delivered yet to our Kickstarter customers because we only had pre-production units. So these are the units before you go into full swing production that you kind of prove that, okay, everything is designed as you want it to, right? And straight away, we wanted to get those out in the hands to get that additional reach and help. And then they'd always backlink towards, at that stage, it was now our Indiegogo, like our landing page where people could then pre-buy as part of that kind of pre-sale period. So that was an initial part that then extended also to like YouTube tech reviewers, where they could kind of give a bit more of a video editing experience. Like me personally, when I research, whether it's headphones or other devices, like I always look at like YouTube as my primary kind of research tool because I want to see it, I want to feel it through the influencer. And so I knew that was like really important, so did Will. And so reaching out to kind of tech influencers who were happy to do it either in exchange for product or even better, like as a loan unit, because we didn't have that many to hand out, were like, that's generally what we're looking for because they were only really the levers that we had at the time. Yeah, so those were the key points now, but like even now that we're further down in the business, like those are still really important. But now it's not us, scrappily sending emails out. It's there's a part of the business that really focuses on that.
Yeah, and it's not saying, hey, you can borrow this for 2 weeks, but I need it back because that's the only one I have. Yeah.
It was also really good to actually have the support from a lot of these like tech reviewers and even like tech YouTubers, they're tech reviewers as well, because I guess they saw the story that a couple of university students did want to take a product to market, and it isn't this typical kind of product launch story. So for them actually giving us that real feedback as well was like very, very valuable right there, and their relationships that we've just built and fostered over time as well.
So in terms of the software side of the company, is your main kind of strategy and or advantage with that now that you do have like an existing user base to market to directly, or are you trying to get people, like is the Espresso flow software useful to someone only if they have an Espresso, or is that like a separate way and it kind of creates like a flywheel effect? So is it like purely just this is a way to add even more value to people who have Espresso, or is it like kind of like a two-pronged flywheel where now this is just a general utility that is useful for anyone to manage whatever's on their screen, and then those people also might happen to find out down the road that you have a product? So is it like sum is greater than the parts, or is kind of two parts of the same strategy?
The core of it is delivering the best, productive on-the-go workspace. So it's really core to enhancing the Espresso display and the experience that you can have there. That's really the core of it and helping that person be more productive. But there's a number of features that that about that kind of core mission, that independent of whether needing an espresso display itself. For example, we've created 2 products that are in the Espresso Flow app. One of this is Snap, Windows snapping. You may be familiar with this. There's a number of other similar tools that allow for hotkey shortcuts to arrange your monitors into your windows into a particular space, left, right, up, down, this monitor, that monitor. And so we bundled that into that app and make it very easy to access and use. And then another one is a one-click Workspace launcher. And that is a completely new and unique product. And that allows that, imagine you have, a 3-screen workspace and you know exactly what apps and windows that you want in that layout.
And what spots on within
exactly
each screen.
what spot that you want, exactly the layout that you want, exactly the app that you want, or web page, or maybe like if it's a browser, the exactly 3 tabs that you want. With this Workspace launcher, you can save that configuration and with one click, open all of those up into exactly where you want it. So those features are we think about our display user when we create those. But if some of them are independent of actually requiring to buy an espresso display, we still want to bring people in to our ecosystem and community. And also if they say, for example, new brand, they haven't heard of us before, there's somewhat of a degree of, skepticism, which is natural. Then they can download our software. It's free and it will have some of those features and functionality. And as they kind of learn more about us and what we do, and if we do more software updates that allow for new features that they like, and if they find themselves in a position where they've needed a second screen when they're traveling on the go, or whether they really need to improve their kind of drawing workflow, then hopefully they'll think of us and say, look, I already know their products. I know it's the high quality. They're really going to help me be my most productive self. And if that works, that's also great.
Yeah, you've already built some trust and affinity as well with these people. And some brand awareness.
Well, yeah, of course. And that's, when you're a new brand, you're going up against the brand recognition of all these companies that have been around before the internet.
Yes.
All these big companies. And in doing so, they're, building trust and credibility and social proof is really important. And, it's one way to have a lot of reviews that say they like the product, whether it's from kind of professional reviewers or industry bodies who have design awards and product awards, or whether it's from your customers saying this is what they like, whether it's in, star review form or whether it's in a video testimonial form. But there's no greater kind of way to develop trust by delivering value to that person. And if you can do so with software or content or anything else, then that's always a good thing to do.
Let's do some more kind of rapid bonus question type questions, less kind of following this story arc, you could say. If you were not starting the company over again necessarily, because we don't need to start at day zero, but like you said, you didn't really have any formal training in marketing and you didn't have any really frame of reference for how you should do it besides just I'm a tech enthusiast and I learn about products from journalists, and maybe I should just put my product in front of journalists. What would you do now in that first year of business from a marketing perspective to accelerate growth, get bigger faster?
I'd do all the things we're doing now, but I would have just done them a lot faster and a lot better.
Okay.
So really around clear positioning and use cases around the times and circumstances where people need the product and are most frustrated by not having the espresso display. So this has obviously been a really exciting journey to be on the last couple of years in 2 ways. One is my first time bringing a product into the market, growing a team, doing subsequent product launches, growing a more kind of scaled kind of marketing function as well. And being a part of a business that's growing. So there's so many learnings that kind of come in that. And then you put the additional layer of the last couple of years as well, which is particularly, doing all of that whilst also going through, the pandemic in Australia where, there was a couple of lockdowns and I guess the degree of uncertainty or limited travel around the world and, either the headwinds or the tailwinds around kind of accelerated forces around working from home. And that brought a lot of opportunities as well where people were working from home, but they didn't have a work from home office or desk setup. So something flexible like our product would be really useful. And then the world kind of like opening up again, and then kind of travel really rebounding quite quickly. So a lot of people wanted a travel solution. So it's been a real interesting time. You know, if I knew what I knew now, I guess back then you'd be better, I guess, you know, navigating through that a lot better. But when it comes down to a lot of it is really the common sense of, you know, make it very clear, you know, what your product is and who it's for and what problems it solves and what it can do for you that without having that product you cannot do. And then I guess demonstrating what is the value of being able to do that. So say, for example, if I commonly mark up documents and edit documents and I currently kind of print everything, mark it up on pen and paper, and then I scan it and then I send that, you know, the cost of printing plus, you know, maybe a 20 to 30% kind of productivity improvement, what's that value? You know, if there's a clear way to communicate or to demonstrate that and then communicate it and know who, you know, really cares about that, maybe consultants, maybe, you know, lawyers, those types of people who kind of routinely do those types of workflows, then that makes it super clear and super obvious whether or not that person should do that. And then don't just make that, yeah, listen to me, this is what I say, because, you know, you're going to be buying our product. Let's get third parties who can verify that, yes, this solves that problem in that way for that person. So that's essentially kind of all it is from like a marketing function, but then also making sure that you're listening to your customers. That goes into a place that you can all access and see it and like continually look to like improve the product based on problems that kind of customers have that you might not have known about, as well as like new technologies constantly coming out. And then how does that fit into kind of your solution?
That makes a ton of sense. You're kind of just, I think like a theory and kind of brainstorming is that just people who are really good at something are just people who take like the fundamentals really, really seriously. You're saying like, you really wouldn't do anything differently than the fundamentals that are obvious. You just like get testimonials, which is advice everyone hears all the time. You just like would not have procrastinated it. I'm not saying you did procrastinate it. You would just make effort to get them early and often and powerfully, and then have hyper-specific marketing materials. That's not new or uncommon advice. You're just like, I would just take that more seriously, do it sooner, do it higher quality sooner, put more effort into it from day one, which is super interesting.
It's like the real is creating the unique and modern and contextual product that solves a problem that otherwise isn't solved. You know, that's where the art of all this is, right? Which we, to some degree, were lucky that we discovered that and were able to bring that through to the market. And that's really the core and the essence of it. Being able to show people what the product does and give them the confidence to buy it, and even have, I guess, return policies where if it doesn't do what they want it to do, then they can safely return it without that risk. Like all those things are really that a marketing function does and communicate that. But the engine of building a scalable business, and particularly right now in this context where who knows what the next couple of years of work looks like, how will our behaviors change? One of the things that I'm super interested in is that there's been so many behavioral changes in the last couple of years around work, about how we do work. And we hear all the stories around how offices are entirely being restructured and planned in different ways based on this new environment and a different role that the office plays. And houses and house planning and the role of a study is in a household is really changing and stuff as well. But the devices that you use to work are still exactly the same as they were a few years ago. You know, so, and like, I guess besides us, we're a new product that's come into this suite for people to use that's relevant to what is happening now today. Now, that creates a really exciting kind of sandpit for us to explore and listen to customers and listen to other potential people who would love our products to say, hey, like, where are you working? What are you doing? And you know, now that we understand the hardware supply chain, now that we understand, I guess a couple of productivity tools with our software suite, and even kind of new interfaces like having a touchscreen consistent across Windows and Mac, like that creates such a great environment for us to kind of solve a lot of these challenges. And then the marketing and sales is communicating these solutions for people.
Yeah, and even getting specific with like a checkout page, you know, a developer's pain points where it's like, okay, tired of having Visual Studio, and you literally say the names of the applications. Like, tired of having Visual Studio open in one tab, and then I guess we'll date ourselves here, Chat GPT-3 in another tab where you're actually asking it to write the code for you, and then the actual list of the customer requirements, then your Slack feed, then your general to-do list, and then your iMessage. It's like, but then you have a separate one for the Photoshop person. You're like Photoshop, Illustrator, and this is me not in that person, so I can't like list the things that they'd have open. But when you can get hyper specific with your targeting, and that's what you also gain from the customer feedback, is they tell you, this is how I used it with this setup. You put this application here, this application here, this application here, and then in your marketing materials, you literally just replicate that. So it speaks directly to someone in that exact state of mind, instead of saying, you know how you like to have stuff on screens? Well, with us, you can have stuff on screens, but it's like, this is the language that they're already using in their own mind.
What you want people to do is you want them to see themselves achieving success with your product or solution. Now, if you provide that familiarity within, whether it's, say, for example, social media ads or a YouTube video, if you enable them to see the familiarity of tools that they commonly use in combination setups that they know, or even the common frustrations when they have to flick between different tabs and lose a spot of where they are on their page, like that familiarity will allow them to identify and say, hey, this is a solution that I really want. The frustration, say for us, a very common one is having to have, split screening on one little laptop screen, and that frustration, having to move that around and trying to navigate around that versus, or even having multiple apps that you have to flick between and constantly getting lost, clicking the wrong tab. Even when I still use a laptop screen and I find myself in a situation where I haven't got my Espresso display, like I still get really frustrated by that. And, but rather than thinking, oh, this is annoying, I just have to deal with this, it's like, why did I forget my Espresso display? So like those common frustrations, and then syncing that with the familiarity of giving, different customer profiles and personas and whatnot, the tools that they use is what really resonates with them. Like, people want to understand that you understand them, and that your solution can help and have a high degree of success for them. Like, I probably didn't appreciate this as much, and based on, I guess, our demographic of being, I guess, engineering alumni in our 20s, but like a lot of people are quite hesitant of adopting a new technology, like a new tech product, because
that's a great point. Yeah.
Yeah. I really undervalued this, because really they think, will this work for me? Can I get it working? How do I get it set up? If I have an issue, do I want to deal with that? And all of those types of questions, which are pretty natural, but that has created a degree of substantial, like, kind of barrier for people to have this consideration. So we always try and really make the customer experience as easy and seamless as possible. That's like what we're saying before. The Espresso Flow app has your display arrangement settings, like right there in the app. So you don't have to explore in other places that you may not be familiar with, and it adds to that friction.
Yeah, a lot of Mac users, I forget that a lot of Mac users just don't know how to use system preferences. And that's just a fact.
Yeah, and we get that from our customer support tickets, and these are the types of things when listening to our customers, kind of saying, hey, how can we remove this? Like, how hard would it be to remove that friction from whatever percentage of users experience it? In addition, also, I think having the one cable USB-C plug and play, and showing how easy it is just to set up, you can get going in about 10 to 15 seconds super easily. And there's a very limited margin of error. Like, that gives a lot of people the confidence to try it. And I think that's super important always, because people are calculating in their head, one, what is the value of this? That, like, save this solution, like, worked for me. What is the value of that? And that essentially justifies the price, And then the other factor of it is, what is the likelihood that I'm going to achieve that? And that's pretty much if they think it's super high that they're going to calculate, the super high that they're going to get the end state that they want, and it's a very high value, then they're excited to be a customer. They're thinking, why didn't I get this earlier? If if the value is, I guess, moderate, and the risk of it not working for them is moderate to high, then there's a lot of convincing that you've got to do. You've got to show them very contextual information. You've got to make sure the user experience is super clean, super easy, that they feel confident. They can see videos of the steps that you would give your customers after they purchase, and they can see, hey, I know how to do this, And once, because now you've reduced that risk for them, and then now you've shown, say for example, what's the value of me being able to use this as a second screen, and the productivity benefit is value A. But now you go, well, with touch you can now do B, C, and D, and the value's gone a lot higher, and they're like, wow, that's actually useful for me, and that's how you do that. Now, that's a lot more easily said than done, of course, because it's a lot of content. It's a lot of personas who care about a lot of different things and a lot of different feature sets. So, definitely to loop back to your question about, I would be able to execute on all of that a lot quicker now with what I know because of all of that. And that's a lot guided from pretty much just listening to customers and thinking about them as well. Like, our origin story is that we are the customer. Like, that's what we wanted. Like, we built this initially for us, and always thinking.
But us meaning tech-friendly engineering students.
Well, yes, and you've got to understand where your blind spots may be because of that. Say, for example, thinking about the ease of use and onboarding setup.
In their 40s or 50s.
Yeah, exactly. So you've always got to be thinking beyond that. And you have everyone has like friends and family in their day-to-day life that you can ask these types of questions and kind of do that research to figure out where those gaps are. But I always like the easiest way, that's kind of this like guiding principle, is thinking back to like, if this wasn't me, if this was like another company, what would I expect? Where would I go to do research? What would I want to see? What would I want to hear? What would give me the confidence to understand how much I should pay for something?
Such a good question.
So like, and that's because that like your own experience, like people, I don't know, maybe discount their own experience and their own consumer behaviors, but you've been a consumer like your whole adult life and making considerations. And I have a bunch of tech products that I research and I look at, and
many you chose to purchase, many you chose not to purchase.
Exactly. And I'm probably in a couple of funnels and customer journeys of other products as well. So utilizing that is really useful, and that's a very good guiding principle as well about how you have your own kind of consumer behaviors, consumer patterns. Are you someone who waits for sale periods versus are you someone who is really about convincing that you're going to deliver the value from the product, and therefore there's the opportunity cost of delaying it. They're two very different, I guess, psychographics of purchasing behavior. So, and how you choose to kind of communicate and synthesize that, and then build a team that can do that whilst also introducing new products and new features and whatnot. That's a fun now. It's like the fun is the machine rather than the idea.
Yeah, that makes sense. Let's do two really off-topic quick bonus questions and then wrap this up. What was the coolest thing you saw this year at CES besides outside of your specific domain of productivity tools and monitors and computer screens?
Yeah, it's a little bit out of it, but not so far out of it. It was more of a multiplayer AR like TV screen that you could interact with and see, obviously an AR interface, but like the both of us could look at it and see two different things at once. Cool. It's like multiplayer. And what I was surprised about was actually there was a real prominence of AR, VR, metaverse product services, concepts, all the way from the Eureka Park, which is like the startup zone, all the way through to some of the biggest exhibits on display there. So that was really interesting about how our digital life will continue to emerge and progress. That's how I think of it, of not necessarily like, will it be a thing? Will it not be a thing? Does it matter? Does it not? What I want it to look like? What doesn't it? It's more around, say for us, if, particularly with laptop and monitor-based work, and particularly in our position with Espresso, is to think about like, what does our, digital life look like in both personal and professional settings, and what are the tools, what are the ways that we interact, how will that change, how will that mature? Like, I remember earlier days of Facebook, before the days of Instagram. Facebook was a very different place, and how people interacted there was very different. And all these kind of channels and platforms kind of emerge and change. The social norms emerge and change and mature. And this is no different. So yeah, that was a very super exciting time to be in CES, but I was there not as much to like look at what else was new. I was very there.
You're there on business.
Very there to reach as many people as we can to new audiences.
And final question, this is your first time visiting the great state of Arizona, I believe. I'm not certain if that's the case because I know you lived in San Diego in the past. But what is the overall impression of the Phoenix metro area? You a fan, not a fan, enjoying yourself?
For winter, the weather is absolutely incredible. Like we've been having blue sky days and, going for nice walks. We've got a nice fun run on tomorrow as well. So yeah, definitely. I haven't visited Arizona. I think I've driven through it to go to the Grand Canyon. And other than that, like I haven't really kind of stayed here like I have on this trip. But, I really, really do like the area. You've chosen a good place to live in.
Thank you, man. Where can people who want to watch videos, potentially see themselves in their shoes, research the espresso, watch tutorials, etc.? Where should they go? How do they spell it? Domains, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so our website is Espresso, ESPRES.SO. We haven't been yet able to acquire espresso.com. So that's just ESPRES.SO. That's our website, has all the information there. We have a lot of tech reviews, like say on our homepage, that you can access it there. Like all the research that you want to do about finding out about our products, like we put onto the website. Like obviously go off, do your own independent research, but all of the things that we know people like to look at and research and review, like we put it right in front of you. So it's just quicker and easier from there. And then also, I guess our social channels also have various videos, ones that we've produced ourselves and others that may come from like customers or testimonials and other people who kind of want to talk about our products.
Awesome. Well, this has been a blast. Thank you so much, Scott.
Thanks, Lewis. Good to do it in person.
Absolutely.